You're listening to Strategy Simplified, the world's largest and best podcast on all things consulting. Today, we're bringing you an amazing case interview example with our friends at Kearney. Before we get into the episode, we'd love to connect with you on social media, so check us out wherever you are, whether it's LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, etc. We're all over, and we'd love to get your follow and your engagement. All right, so for today's episode, we brought on Kearney, and specifically we brought on Alfredo, who's a manager at the firm, to demonstrate what the firm's case interview style looks like. So Alfredo leads a really fun, interesting, exciting case, and on the hot seat as the interviewee is a brave candidate from our community. His name is Edward. You'll get to meet him. He's awesome. And overall, it's just a really fun case, lots of learnings and really cool insights that you can apply to your own case journey. Highly encourage you to follow along with a pencil and paper. You'll get the most out of this next 45 minutes or so. That way, the firm is hiring for a select number of roles. More information at the link in this episode's show notes. All right, here we go with this Kearney case interview demonstration.
Fantastic. So for those, obviously, Edward, you and I are going to solve the case, but for those that are solving at home, the process is pretty similar to any type of case, right? We lay out a prompt. Edward is going to provide us with a framework, and then we're going to explore through this framework some of the hypotheses and arrive to a recommendation, and then in the end, I'll provide some feedback. The only differentiating factor, Edward, is, we're solving this case together. We're a collaborative firm, so I want you to put yourself in the mind of a Kearney consultant, right? We are tackling an issue that came from a CEO. I'm going to describe the prompt quickly, but if you have any questions or what would like to brainstorm, what is the best path forward, let's do it together, okay?
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome. So, and this actually is one of my favorite cases. I did this. This comes from actual experience from a couple of years ago. So our client is a carbonated soft drink manufacturer and distributor, and they're currently exploring the possibility of expanding their glass bottle brand portfolio in the US market. The CEO asked Kearney to help determine whether that's a good idea or not. And while they haven't provided a specific margin or revenue targets, they want to make sure that if they expand, that it is actually a profitable pursuit.
Cool. So I'm just going to reiterate the case to make sure I have all the information that you provided. So does that sound like a good approach to you for now?
For 100%, cool. Yeah.
So our company is a carbonated soft drink manufacturer and distributor, and they're looking to expand in the US about their glass bottle portfolio. They don't necessarily have a target in mind, but they just want to make sure that the company would be profitable if they expand and ensure that the venture would be a profitable investment.
A lot of times you'll get a prompt from a CEO that says, is this a good idea or not? How should I think about it, right? So that's the help that they're looking to get.
Sounds good. Yeah, I do have some clarifying questions in mind before we jump into the framework. First, do they have an idea of where they want to expand first, or is it just larger US market that we're looking at?
No, it's broader in the US.
And do we have a time frame specific do we have a specific time frame we're looking forward to make sure that this is a good investment?
Not at this point. They're just exploring options.
Sounds good. And do we handle the distribution ourselves and the manufacturing ourselves and the rest? How is the business model? Do we sell in stores, for example, or what is our business model like in this case?
Oh, that's a great question. So basically, yes, they're a manufacturer and distributor, right? In the carbonated soft drink space, you can have the large scale buyers like, say, a Walmart or a Target, right? And then they have a DSD, which is another model where they just go and distribute. For the purposes of this case, just assume that they're focusing on manufacturing and distribution, and they're exploring options. No need to go into the channel.
Sounds good. Is it okay if I take a couple seconds to structure my thoughts?
I would be surprised if you didn't.
Cool. Sounds good.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. It's Japheth here, your producer, and I really quickly wanted to pop in to tell you about Black Belt. So if you're targeting a consulting role at a firm like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, Oliver Wyman, Accenture, you name it, Black Belt is a structured case prep program that might be exactly what you need to push you over the hump and land that offer. So it is a structured case coaching program where you'll get one-on-one coaching from a former McKinsey, Bain, or BCG consultant. You'll also get a year of free access to our new community for exclusive employer info sessions, training, master classes, community support, and much more. Last but not least, you get unlimited digital materials to support your case prep progress. Oh, and by the way, over 80% of black belts who complete the program land a consulting role. That's pretty incredible. So we'd love to see you inside of black belt. Join at the link in the show notes.
Hey, it's Ian with Management Consulted, your favorite go-to gal for anything and everything MC. I'm so excited to share with you today something really special. I don't know if you know this, but I provide 15-minute meetings for candidates who are looking for recruitment support. I can help you strategize and plan out how you're going to navigate through your recruitment season and exactly how MC can help you. In that meeting, we can review your resume and I can provide you some industry insights tailored to your specific background. And maybe, just maybe, I can sprinkle just a little bit of hope in there as well. I'd be excited to connect with you when you're ready to explore personalized coaching support, so feel free to book a meeting with me through the link in the show notes today.
So I do have a sort of understanding of how I want to approach this case. The way I want to do it is kind of in 4 main buckets, and I'll list off all the buckets that I have, and then we'll go into each of them one by one specifically.
Okay.
First one, I want to look into the market attractiveness, see how big is the market, see like what are the competition like, and there were some recent trends, which I will go into more in the later time. Second would be company capabilities, understanding like what we are doing best and like how we can make sure that this product is proprietary enough to be able to capture enough market share, as much market share as possible. Third one, I want to look into the financials. What's the upfront cost like? What's the revenue and cost drivers? And also like the payback period to make sure that this is a profitable investment. And 4 would be risks and considerations. Obviously, we don't want to have any cannibalization within this product and our portfolio. We want to understand how we can enter the market, what's the best way to do so, and things like that. So going into the framework, in terms of the market attractiveness, I want to first understand the size, so like how big is the market that we're trying to play at.
Let's take a step back. I like your framework, but let's pressure test it a bit, right? So
sounds good.
Let's answer the structure, the framework around the questions that we're gonna tell the CEO, right? What is the question that we're answering with each of the components?
Sounds good. Yeah. So I'll go into them one by one. Do you want me to go one by one?
Yeah, each of the components of the framework, no need to go into the next level. Just what are the buckets and what are the answers that we will be getting? Okay,
sounds good. So market attractiveness we will first want to understand, is this a good idea or not, right? So this is like a pretty broad question. So the way I'm thinking about this is when we think about the investment being attractive, we want to make sure that we're entering a market where we can have a profitable investment, right? So in order to understand that, we want to understand how big is the market. We want to understand how fragmented is the competition. So like, is there enough room for us to play in terms of when we enter this market? I want to understand the growth rate. Is there like enough growth so we will be able to handle this investment and also have a continuous income and profitability?
Okay.
And one thing that I also want to share is recent trends. Understand like what has been the recent trends within the market. Like, why did we choose to specifically expand our glass bottle portfolio, right? So understanding customer preferences, like would they be willing to buy this product that we're trying to expand? And lastly, I also want to look into the regulation in this category, just because I know that glass could be sort of like a haphazard product that if it breaks, there might be certain compliance issues. So like that would also be a sort of a mini consideration within this larger bucket of market. Does that make sense to you? Do you have any questions for the market part for now?
I think that's pretty reasonable. What comes next?
Cool. What comes next is the company capabilities. I want to understand what's our existing glass bottle portfolio looking like? What have we done in terms of the research and development? Where does it stand in terms of the ongoing like maintenance, or like how we make sure that this product is like proprietary enough to be able to capture as much market share as possible? I want to look into our sales and marketing team. So understanding if we have any presence, if we have any sort of experience in expanding our products to a different market, whether that's geographically or like to new customers. So understanding those would be a good sort of a starting point in terms of providing us with a general understanding of our own company and our expertise as well.
Okay, so no need to go into the third and fourth. I think they're pretty clear. Is there a reason why you first look at capabilities before profitability?
Before profitability, I want to. So profitability is the way I think about this is first we develop this product and then we develop the costs. The reason I chose capabilities first is because I want to make sure that before making the investment, we have the expertise and necessary sort of company like brain power, right? To make sure that we can make this investment a profitable one.
You could also make a case, right? That if possibly we could make it profitably, right? That we can figure out how to do it. So that there's several options. Not necessarily just challenging you to see the logic, but it works. Okay, let's talk about the market. So I know a bunch of people are gonna hate me right now, but let's try to figure out using some basic heuristics. What is the market size of the glass in terms of revenue? What is the glass bottle carbonated soft drink market in the US?
So glass bottle carbonated soft drinks. So we don't necessarily look into like the people that buy it in cans or like the fountain drinks, just the glass bottles.
Yep, exactly. And for this, please walk me through the equation without going into the calculations, and then you can,
Cool.
Show the numbers.
Sounds good. Is it okay if I take a couple of seconds to structure my thoughts first?
Of course.
Cool. So the way I want to structure this market sizing problem is first I want to start off with the US population. Understand how big is the US population. I would assume to use the 300 million number unless you have any other thoughts, but I guess we won't dive into the calculations just now. The way I want to segment the population is understanding what are the percentage of people who get soft drinks on a weekly basis, right? So from my personal experience, I have friends who hate soft drinks. Couldn't be me, but there are people like that. I have friends who get soft drinks like once a week. I have friends who get soft drinks like I'd say twice a week. And also I have friends who get soft things like 3+ times a week. So those 4 main buckets is the one I'm trying to look at. And then once we have those 4 buckets, we'll assume the percentages, make some assumptions, unless you have any other data to show, but we can make some assumptions about the percentages that fall into each of those categories. So that will give us the sort of the sum of those numbers will give us the number of people who consume soft drinks weekly. So after that, I want to sort of understand what's the percentage of the people who consume soft drinks in a glass bottle, right? So understanding the percentage of people who buy just glass bottle soft drinks. And then from that point on, I will try to annualize that number just because we have used weekly numbers so far. And then multiply that number by 50 just to get that's the annualization part. And then also understand what's the average cost of soft drinks to get the revenue number as well. Does that approach make sense to you, or do you want to make any tweaks for that before we get started?
Wouldn't say cost but price, but yeah, it makes sense. But I'm going to challenge that framework a bit, right? Because you're looking at the youth population, it's a good heuristic, but there's another way that you could look at it just based on how do you anticipate people will consume sodas, right? Is it an
Households?
Individual who buys the soda? Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense too.
Perfect. Let's use households because it's simpler, but I agree with your logic.
Cool. Sounds good. So is that the only tweak you wanted to make to the equation, or is there anything else?
For simplicity, let's use that one, yeah.
Cool. So diving into the numbers here, I would assume that based on the US population, I would assume that there's about 100 million households. Is that a good number to use for you? Cool. So we'll start off with 100 million households in the US, and then we'll go to the second portion of the framework, which is understanding the weekly consumption of soft drinks. So we have the 0, so like the non-drinkers, we have the 1, we have the 2, and the 3+ times a week. So going into here, making some assumptions, I would assume that about 30% of the US population doesn't consume any soft drinks just because there's recently especially there's a big push towards more healthier alternatives of soft drinks. So I would assume that 30% of the US population would not be consuming anything. So does that number make sense to you, or should?
Yeah.
Cool. So 30 million households are already out of the window. When we think of the people who drink soft drinks once a week, I would assume they're more than people who don't drink anything. So not a lot, but I would say about 40%, if that number makes sense to you.
Yep.
Based on my experience.
Yeah, all of the, I assume yes, unless it's, I'm going to call you if anything's crazy.
Cool. Sounds good. So for efficiency reason, I'll go through each of them again. So we have about 70% so far. I would assume that people who drink soft drinks twice a week would consist of about 20% of the entire population. And then people who drink soft drinks 3+ times a week would only consist of about 10% of the entire US household population.
Mm-hmm.
So looking into the numbers here, trying to quantify our numbers that we have we have people who drink once a week, or that are the 40 million households. People who drink soft drinks are about 20 million households, and also people who drink soft drinks 3+ times. I would assume the 3 number. So that would give us about 10%. So overall, we have here, which is 10 million. Overall, we have about 70 million who consume soft drinks on a weekly basis. But from that point on, I will try to calculate how many soft drinks. So again, taking into account the numbers of bottles that they consume. So for the people who drink once a week, that would be $40 million people. For the people who drink twice a week, that would be about, again, 40 million. And for people who drink 3 times a week, that would be about 30 million. So adding all those up, that would be about 110 million bottles per week.
Okay.
So 40 plus 40 plus 30. And then from this point on, I would try to estimate the number of soft drinks who are sold in bottles, right? So again, making some assumptions here. I want to try to make it as realistic as possible from my experience.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to get a soft drink, I usually either get a fountain one or in a can, which is probably the easier option, or a plastic bottle, right? So I would assume that glass bottles would not be a huge component of this market. I would assume that I'm thinking between 10 to 20% would only be glass bottles. For simplicity reasons, I would use the 10% number, if that makes sense to you.
Yep.
Cool. So weekly consumption is about 11 million glass bottles per week. And then from that point on, I'm going to multiply that number by about 50 to annualize this number in order to get the annual number. So 11 million times 50 would give us around 550 million bottles.
Okay.
And then I want to understand what's the average price per glass bottled soft drink, right? Don't really have any numbers here, but I would assume that $5 would make sense here. Actually, maybe that's too much, just because.
Wow, man, you buy really expensive sodas.
I'm a bit biased here, just because I go to school in California and I'm in New York now. But I would assume $2 per soft drink would probably make more sense.
Yeah, that's closer to it. Okay.
Cool. So that would give us about $1.1 billion in annual revenue.
The only number that I think that I would challenge from your assumptions that I think are reasonable is if you have a household, right, that is buying sodas, do you think they're just going to buy one soda in the supermarket? One bottle, you just take one little small bottle, right? You probably buy either 6 packs or, that you can take an average of, you can make some assumption, right? So let's just multiply by 2 and say that the market is twice as large, okay?
That makes a lot of sense, yeah. So we will get about 2.2 billion.
Perfect.
In annual revenue.
All right, so that's reasonable. So what else do we need to know to answer the first component of the case that you described?
So we do have the market size here. Looking back at the framework we have, we said that we also want to look into the competitive landscape here. So understand how fragmented is the market, how much room is there for us to grow, if there's sort of enough competition. If the competition is fragmented, we can potentially capture more share than if it's dominated by big players, such as, the things that come to mind are like PepsiCo or Coca-Cola that could potentially be dominating the market. But that's my assumption here. If I were to move forward with the case, I would like to look into the competitive landscape at first again. Yeah. And then that would make sense to me.
Fantastic. Okay, to keep us moving. So let's assume that the top 2 largest players take 50% of the market, right? Our client has about 15% of the market, okay? And there's another player that is very small, or used to be very small, that Its name is Jarritos. It has less than 10% of the market, but it has been growing at 30% CAGR for the past 4 years. What other information you might think is valuable?
So just digesting the information that you gave me is the top two competitors, which would be like something like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, would have combined 50% of the total market. We are also a pretty big player in the market. We have about 15% of the total of the annual revenue, so 15% of 2.2 billion. And then there's a third player who has less than 10% of the market, who has been growing really fast at a 30% sort of CAGR. The first thing that jumps to me is that obviously I want to think about the top two competitors, and we have only 15% of the market share. They are sort of out of our reach to compete with. So I want to understand how we can capture the rest of the market to get on par with those numbers, just because from the numbers you gave me, these don't necessarily add up to 100%. So I think there's other competition there, just to flag that. The second thing that jumps to mind is we mentioned this third player called Jarritos, which has less than 10% market share, but has been growing at about 30% CAGR, which is annual growth compounded. So what I would look at next is understand the reason they are growing at 30%, just because growing at 30% is a really, to put things in perspective, growing at a 30% CAGR is a really like aggressive growth within the market, especially within the soft drinks.
Do you know that yet? Or are you missing any piece of information to know if 30% is good?
Sorry, do I know what?
Do you know if 30% is great in this context, or are you missing some information?
Sorry, I still understand the question.
Do you know if 30% CAGR is good compared with the rest of the players, or are you missing any other information?
Yeah, we are obviously missing some information about, what their product is, or like.
No, it's something simple. It's what is the growth rate for the rest of the market, or for yes, the client, right? So the market has been growing at 2%, right? And our client's market share has been decreasing 2% a year.
Cool. So we have been decreasing at 2% per year, and the market has been growing at 2% positive.
Yeah. And Jarritos, they specifically target Hispanic consumers.
Target Hispanic consumers. Cool. So this provides more information about where we can move the case forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, do you feel you have enough to come up with a hypothesis for your first buckets?
So just to take things a step back for now, just to have digest all the information that we have, we said that the market is growing at about 2% per year. We are growing at about negative 2% per year, which is obviously not growing. And the competition that we said, Jarritos, is growing at about 30% CAGR. So because they are only targeting Hispanic consumers. And I think I've heard of that brand, so they are selling like a different type of product. So what I would like to do next is understand the specific target demographics that we are trying to go after, right? So they have been growing at 30%, which is a very large number compared to the market growth, which is about 28% difference between each number. So the second thing that I would like to do is understand why have we been declining our market share, understanding what customers are we targeting and how we are targeting them, and potentially finding out the most profitable customers to target when it comes to our product and launching our product within this new market. Will that make sense to you? Or?
Yeah, and I want to move on to the other components of the case, but I think those are very, very useful questions, right? We have been decreasing because we were just focusing on other segments. And basically, we do, across our portfolio, we do have some brands that could potentially target the same market as Jarritos.
Cool.
So we have the project, we're in the middle of the project, and then the chief marketing officer says, hey, I know you've been looking into this, but we know that whatever we can produce, we can sell and make money out of it.
Okay, so our chief marketing officer says whatever we can produce that we can sell.
Yep. Profitably.
Cool. So I want to understand, whenever we say whatever we can produce, does that mean like we can produce sort of a competitor for Jarritos or?
No, whatever you can produce of glass bottles, right? We know that there's a market for it.
Cool. Sounds
and
good.
And that we can make money out of it.
Sounds good. So yeah, again, where I'll probably try to go next is understanding what are some customer demographics here, understand like what do they want within this market? Like why is Jarritos growing at 30% rate and why are we declining at 2%? We said that we have some portfolio of products, so I would like to look into the portfolio as well and each of those growth rates.
So let's go back. Let's take a step back to your hypothesis, right? The first question was, is the market attractive? What is your answer? Yeah. Okay.
Market is attractive. Yes.
What was the second question?
The second question is, what was the competitive landscape?
I know, but wasn't the market attractive part of the competitive landscape? I'm thinking about the 4 buckets.
The buckets. Yeah. The second was the company capabilities, so understanding what we can sell.
Okay. The third one?
Third one was the financial one. So understanding what the upfront cost would be and also revenue and cost drivers.
Do we have an answer for that one already?
We have our market size, which is 15% of 2.2 billion, which is the revenues.
But we also know that the chief marketing officer said, whatever we can do, we can sell, we can make money out of it.
That is true. I just don't necessarily understand what that would entail, what that means in terms of whatever we can make, we can sell.
What that means is that we need to focus on your second bucket.
Cool, the capabilities.
Yeah. So let me give you some information. So the client, they have manufacturing operations, both in Mexico and in the US, right? And they're exploring to see if they can focus some of those manufacturing operations to actually focus on those glass bottles and try to take them to markets. What are some factors or considerations that you would want to consider?
Cool. So we said that we have manufacturing capabilities in both Mexico and the US, and we want to focus on glass bottles. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would want to understand is when it comes to glass bottles, what percentage of manufacturing is being done in Mexico versus what percentage of manufacturing is being done in the US? Second thing.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Second thing I want to look at is understand if we do produce the majority of our manufacturing within the US, I want to understand what does it cost to sort of produce it in each country. Like, is it cheaper to produce it in Mexico? Is it cheaper to produce it in the US? So understanding the cost drivers for that. So understanding the direct labor, direct materials, potentially some overhead, understand like what's the cheapest way to produce this in order to make a profitable investment. And also the third one that I would try to understand would be the distribution model, right? We said that we manufacture and distribute our products, so the distribution is on us. So I want to understand how much it costs us to distribute the products that we manufacture within Mexico to the US, just because we're trying to expand within the continental US, right? So understanding whether or not we would spend a lot of money if we invest in the cheap labor in Mexico, how much would it cost us to bring that shipping over there? So like any border control costs, any other additional costs about like truck drivers or anything else.
Okay, so let's simplify the framework a bit, right? Because basically what they're saying is, hey, we have these 2 potential options to manufacture, right? Then there are some cost considerations that need to go into it. There are some additional considerations, okay? So we have cost, we have additional considerations. The first one that I don't know if you mentioned or not is if there's capacity, manufacturing capacity out of the 2 plants. The answer is yes, okay? So you started touching on that a bit, but let's brainstorm. What are the key costs that you will be evaluating, right? Let's say that you're the manager of the team and you need to assign each of the associates to focus on one of the areas. So what are the cost buckets that you will be thinking of when comparing these 2 options?
Cool. So again, talking about the variable and fixed costs, starting off with the variable costs, I would want to understand how much we're paying for labor. Mm-hmm. So understanding the wages per employee that we are trying to understand the cost of. I want to understand the direct materials and whether or not there is disparity between the US and Mexico. So what are some components that go into it? What are some, like how much it costs us to sort of create one single unit of sub bottle. For the fixed cost, we touched upon this for the capacity issue. So I want to understand how much we're paying per rent, how much we're paying for administrative costs.
Okay.
For all of this, administrative cost, not as much, just because we're trying to understand the cost of goods sold here, based on my initial thoughts. But yeah, understanding the administration cost, and also in the variable cost, I forgot to mention that we also need to take into account the distribution costs. So understand how much it costs us to distribute our products, our products from the Mexico to the US or the US intercontinentally.
Perfect.
And also the other thing I would like to consider, which is probably less important than the direct labor and direct materials and distribution, would be understanding how much it costs us to maintain the factories that we are trying to ensure that there is capacity. And we said that we have manufacturing capacity. I want to understand how much capacity we have. So like how many bottles we can actually create and take it to the shelves. And yeah, just to sum it up, those are the costs that I would like to look into.
All right. So here's the information that they came back with. The cost, look at my numbers to make sure that I give you all the right information. Okay. So the cost to manufacture the bottle in Mexico, and manufacture includes direct and indirect and labor, is 10 cents a bottle. The cost to manufacture, including the same components in the US, is 15 cents a bottle. Okay? Then the cost to bring all the goods from Mexico, pass through customs, put it in the same location that you would get it in the US, is 5 cents a bottle. Those are the only costs that need to be a part of this analysis, okay? So as I give you this information, literally you wrap up your day, you get these insights, right? And then the CEO of the company is saying, hey, I'm meeting with the board tomorrow and I want to look smart. So can you prepare a recommendation based on what you know already, so that at least I can give them some signal into if it's a good idea or not?
Sounds good. Do you want to jump into the recommendation first, or try to contextualize these numbers, see what they mean?
No, the CEO just called. You're going to tell the CEO, hey, no, let's talk tomorrow, because he has to talk with the board.
Cool. Sounds good. So the recommendation I would give is try to produce all the bottles that we can in the US. First of all, just because we know that based on the cost information that was provided, I mean, let's take a step back. Try understanding our recommendation first is it would be a good idea to expand this product within the US, just because we found out that the market size is about 2.2 billion %. It's growing at about 2% per year. And also we have been seeing decreasing market share at 2%, but there are ways we can reverse that if we launch this, if we end up launching this venture. So the way I would consider about doing this is first trying to understand where we want to manufacture these bottles. First, the recommendation of that would be continuing the operations in the US, just because that provides about 15 cents per bottle. And whenever we think about the Mexico distribution model, that would provide 10 cents per bottle and also 5 cents per bottle for distribution. So it adds up about the same. But whenever we think about the US model, we don't necessarily exclude this other consideration that come in. So political stability is one consideration that I'm thinking about. That could be a risk if we do end up keeping things in Mexico, right? So there are a lot of border issue control. So politics can change every single day, and there could be potentially a lot of instability when it comes to that. So based on the recommendation, I would say that it does make sense to pursue this venture of expanding our glass bottles within the US and also keeping our operations within the US as much as possible.
All right. The CEO says, thanks for the recommendation, but I believe that my chief marketing officer will kill me if we go with that solution. Why do you think that is?
The reason that I'm thinking about this is we've seen that the third player, who is mostly targeting Hispanic consumer players, has been growing at a 30% CAGR. And when we think about public relations, moving our own capacity from Mexico to the US, which we might have more sort of connection to the Mexico landscape, that could potentially be a reason for that. But I guess ways to mitigate that, we don't necessarily need to put the entire operations within the US. We can sort of keep it at a half and half percentage, and also conduct potentially ways to mitigate that is like conduct customer surveys, understand like what they would feel about their connection to our brand, how they like how their loyalty is, and like what determines that loyalty. So understanding what our customers really want from us and like where is some room that we can play with whenever it comes to public relations would be good places to start.
Perfect. Well, the CEO thanks you for your advice and thanks you for solving the case.
Awesome. Perfect.
Great job, Edward. How do you feel?
I feel good. I wish I had more time to sort of do some calculations about like how much each bottle would make, like how much it cost us to produce each bottle and like what's the break-even point. But I guess, yeah, this was a very interesting case and like very operationally focused, which is probably not something that I'm very used to, but definitely a great experience for me.
Nice. Any questions that popped out of the case?
Yeah, I guess what I've tried, like kind of struggled with is like moving the case forward and trying to understand like what you really want from me whenever we move the case forward. So like, do you have any advice on like how we can make sure that transitions are like more smooth or like more make more sense?
Yes, and I think I've given this case probably more than 50 times, and there's always a different path, but we always go around the same blocks. I think you did a really good job with the structure. I can give you feedback, but specifically to your question about moving the case forward is you're structuring a set of hypotheses, right? And you need to be thinking about the hypothesis and if you have enough data to go solving from one to the other, right?
Cool.
If you feel that you are asking questions, right, that get you to a third level of answer that might not change a lot of the trajectory of the way to solve the hypothesis, then you're going into depth. So I had to steer you back so we don't go into much into the specific. I believe that the questions that you ask compared with other 60 people they're very good, they're very structured, right? But for some of them, you got to a level that was too deep to move on to the next component of the case.
So keep it at a high level more.
Yeah, I mean, basically, hey, is the market attractive? You reach a point where, yeah, the market is growing, there are players that are there, we do have some capabilities. We can probably make an assumption that the market is attractive, right? And you can work with the interviewer to say, like, this gives me enough, right? And then they can prompt you to say, but they're not going to penalize you for coming up with, like, hey, I have enough data to come up with the next answer, right? That also happened with the profitability question, right? Hey, we can do it, we can make money. That's a Q4, not our main focus, right? So you can always stay back to your hypothesis. That's it to confirm. That seems to be confirming my hypothesis that it is a profitable for the client. Any other consideration you'd like to factor in, such as, right, and you can show your brainstorm capability there. But that way you can be crossing off hypothesis and just focus to what you need to solve the case. Perfect. Any other questions?
No, would love to hear your feedback on like specific things that I can do to improve. Like what was the strong points, what was the weak points? Would love to hear more about what you felt.
Perfect. Now, in terms of structure, I can easily tell that this is not your first time doing this. They're not your first rodeo. You did a good job at taking and structuring the buckets. I really liked how you went to the next level and explained the structure, especially when I asked you I pressure tested the hypothesis with you. Right? Sometimes people struggle with that because they say revenue, cost, profitability, right? But you need to actually structure it as an answer to the client, as if it, and especially for everybody that is in the call. When you're thinking about these buckets, think about the storyline for a PowerPoint that you're going to build for the client, right? So basically you want to structure it like this, because if you just put profitability, then that's not a storyline, that's just a bucket, okay? I already mentioned my feedback on going too deep into some areas, right? Especially when you don't get enough. The only part that I think that I would say that we approach differently is when you go into a recommendation, right? With this case, I always force the recommendation, but it's okay to take time to build a recommendation, right? The CEO is calling, but it's okay to take time to prepare the recommendation and put two and two together. There's one point that you missed, that is, hey, the cost of manufacturing in the other is the same. I mean, virtually the costs are the same, but I don't believe that to be the best approach for XY reason that you mentioned, right? In the end, you solved the case, you presented the right recommendation. And Also, another point is you can also recap as if you're doing an executive summary, right? So if you think about a PowerPoint, this is an executive summary, right? And if you go too deep into the specifics on your ability recommendation to the CEO, you probably drifted a bit from that executive summary, right? So you might have missed a couple of the cues there. But overall, I think you did a great job. Compared with all the 60 people that have gone through this, and this is my way to retire this case, right? I wanted to, retire in glory or shame, depending on if people liked it or not. But that's basically that. I think you did a great job.
Thanks, Alfredo. That's very, very, very valuable feedback, and I'll try to work on those for future cases.
Strategy Simplified, it's Jake here. Today I'm really excited to introduce a new segment on the podcast where we're going to be celebrating your consulting offers. That's right. If you have received an offer lately, reach out to us to let us know, team@managementconsulted.com, and we'd love to celebrate with you and maybe invite you onto the podcast to share your story and give hope to folks in the recruiting process or aspiring to be a consultant in the near future. All right, so today's testimonial, let's get right into it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to read a recent client testimonial, someone who received an offer, just to inspire you, give you hope, and let you know that firms are hiring, they are handing out offers, and we'd love to be in your journey to help you land your own offer. So here we go. This is from an undergraduate student in the U.S. I just wanted to reach out and let you know that I ended up receiving 3 summer intern offers at McKinsey, Bain, and Strategy, and all for the most competitive coastal offices. Thank you so much for your help in casing me and providing guidance and coaching. I really appreciate how you challenged me and helped me gain deeper insights into cases that I think really helped me stand out during interviews. I don't think I would have been able to reach that level myself and in such a short amount of time. That's pretty incredible. Congrats to you on these 3 incredible offers at these 3 firms. That's really, really exciting. So now it's up to you to get to choose where you want to go, which is a big decision to make, but we're super excited for you. So that wraps up this segment. We hope this was encouraging to you in your journey. Reach out if it was. Let us know. team@managementconsulted.com. We're always available via email, or we'll hop on a call with you to chat through your journey and how we can help you make the most out of your opportunities and land that offer yourself. All right. Thanks, y'all. That's a wrap on another case interview example here on Strategy Simplified. Thank you for following along. Make sure that you're connected with us on social media, on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, you name it. We're all over. We'd love to connect with you, as well as get your rating and review on whichever podcast platform you're listening on. Help the show reach more listeners, to tell the algorithm that, hey, people are digging this, and to show it to more good people. Finally, please do connect with Kearney. The firm is hiring for a number of roles. Links in this episode's show notes to learn all about those, connect with the firm, and more. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you on another episode soon.